The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Lena Carter sat alone on the edge of her worn-out couch, the glow of her phone screen the only light in the dim living room. It was 11:47 p.m. on Mother's Day, and she'd been staring at that same screen for over 6 hours. Her thumbs hovered above 2 names she knew by heart, Marcus and Tasha, 2 children she'd carried, fed, clothed, and cried over through every storm life threw at them. 2 names that now sat untouched beneath a single, cruel notification. Message delivered. Read 8:03 a.m. She hadn't eaten, not since this morning when she'd carefully wrapped 2 small gifts, one a handmade leather journal stitched with Marcus's initials, the other a delicate silver locket engraved with Tasha's childhood nickname, Starlight. She'd even recorded a voice message, her voice trembling just slightly. "I'm so proud of you both. Happy Mother's Day, my loves." But pride didn't warm an empty house. Outside, thunder cracked like a whip across the sky. Lena flinched, not from the sound, but from the memory it dragged up. That freezing December night 23 years ago when she'd given birth to Marcus in the backseat of a stranger's pickup truck. Snow pelting the windshield, no hospital in sight, no husband to hold her hand. Just her fear, and the tiny cry that told her she wasn't alone anymore. She'd done it all alone, worked double shifts.
You, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, potential in us when no one else did. Her hands began to shake. Because that woman, the one they called Mom, was Evelyn Whitmore, the CEO of the law firm where Marcus worked. The same woman who'd once referred to Lena during a charity gala, that sweet cleaning lady who raised Marcus. Such a miracle he turned out so well. Lena stood abruptly, her knees weak. She walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the cold glass, and watched raindrops race each other down the pane, like tears trying to escape. Then, on impulse, she dialed Marcus. 1 ring. 2. 3. On the 4th, the call ended. Not declined, not sent to voicemail. Blocked. She tried Tasha. Same result. A hollow silence filled the room. Deeper than loneliness. Sharper than grief. It was the sound of being erased. She sank to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest like a lifeline that had just snapped. And in that moment, the storm raged outside, and the clock ticked past midnight. Lena Carter realized something terrifying. She had spent her entire life loving 2 people who never truly, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, her. And Karma hadn't spoken yet, but it was listening. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Lena Carter sat alone on the edge of her worn-out couch, the glow of her phone screen the only light in the dim living room. It was 11:47 p.m. on Mother's Day, and she'd been staring at that same screen for over 6 hours. Her thumbs hovered above 2 names she knew by heart, Marcus and Tasha. 2 children she'd carried, fed, clothed, and cried over through every storm life threw at them. 2 names that now sat untouched beneath a single cruel notification. Message delivered. Read 8:03 a.m. She hadn't eaten, not since this morning, when she'd carefully wrapped 2 small gifts. One a handmade leather journal stitched with Marcus's initials, the other a delicate silver locket engraved with Tasha's childhood nickname, Starlight. She'd even recorded a voice message, her voice trembling just slightly as she whispered, "I'm so proud of you both. Happy Mother's Day, my loves." But pride didn't warm an empty house. Outside, thunder cracked like a whip across the sky.
Lena flinched, not from the sound, but from the memory it dragged up. That freezing December night 23 years ago when she'd given birth to Marcus in the backseat of a stranger's pickup truck, snow pelting the windshield, no hospital in sight, no husband to hold her hand. Just her fear, and the tiny cry that told her she wasn't alone anymore. She'd done it all alone, worked double shifts as a nurse while Tasha slept in a bassinet under her desk, sold her grandmother's wedding ring to pay for Marcus's braces, walked 5 miles in the rain when the bus broke down so she wouldn't miss Tasha's middle school graduation. And now? Now her phone buzzed, not with a call, not with a, "Sorry, Mom, we've been swamped," but with a notification from Instagram. A new post from Tasha. Lena's breath caught. She tapped it open before she could stop herself. The video was flawless. Soft lighting, slow jazz in the background, Tasha in a cream silk dress, smiling beside a woman in her 50s with diamond earrings and a designer handbag. The caption read, "Grateful beyond words to my real mom, the one who taught me grace, class, and how to build a legacy. Happy Mother's Day to the woman who gave me everything I never had. Hashtag blessed, hashtag chosen family." Lena's stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. She scrolled down. There was Marcus in the comments. "Couldn't have made it without you, Mom. You saw potential in us when no one else did." Her hands began to shake. Because that woman, the one they called Mom, was Evelyn Whitmore, the CEO of the law firm where Marcus worked. The same woman who'd once referred to Lena during a charity gala as that sweet cleaning lady who raised Marcus. Such a miracle he turned out so well. Lena stood abruptly, her knees weak. She walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the cold glass, and watched raindrops race each other down the pane like tears trying to escape. Then, on impulse, she dialed Marcus. 1 ring, 2, 3. On the 4th, the call ended. Not declined, not sent to voicemail. Blocked. She tried Tasha. Same result. A hollow silence filled the room, deeper than loneliness, sharper than grief. It was the sound of being erased. She sank to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest like a lifeline that had just snapped.
And in that moment, alayhi salam, the storm raged outside, and the clock ticked past midnight. Lena Carter realized something terrifying. She had spent her entire life loving 2 people who never truly sallallahu alaihi wasallam her. And karma? Karma hadn't spoken yet, but it was listening. The morning after Mother's Day, Lena didn't wake up to birdsong or sunlight. She woke to the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She'd bitten her lip in her sleep, hard enough to draw crimson. She sat up slowly, every joint protesting like rusted hinges. The couch still held the shape of her body from last night. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the world felt heavier for it. She shuffled to the kitchen, her bare feet avoiding the loose floorboard near the fridge, the one that creaked like a warning. She opened the cabinet where she kept the good mugs, the ones Tasha had painted in elementary school. World's Best Mom in wobbly purple letters. She hadn't used them in years. Too precious. Too painful. Instead, she grabbed a plain white mug, chipped at the rim, and filled it with tap water. As she drank, her eyes drifted to the calendar pinned above the stove. Red circles marked birthdays, dentist appointments, Marcus's bar exam date 10 years ago, and one scribbled note in the corner of May 10th. "Call Mom, Happy Mother's Day." She'd written it herself, 2 weeks ago. A dry laugh escaped her, short, broken. Then the estate, the trust, the land. $2.3 million, clear of debt. But there's a condition, one I know will test your heart more than your patience. You cannot disperse any funds while you are legally or financially tied to your biological children. Not Elisa their guardian, not Elisa their dependent, not even Elisa their emergency contact. This isn't cruelty, Lena. It's protection. I watched my own son bleed me dry while calling it love. I won't let that happen to you. Sign the enclosed affidavit, sever the legal ties, and the money is yours. Not for luxury, but for the life you were never allowed to live. With respect, Arthur. Lena sank into a kitchen chair, the letter crumpling in her grip. Her mind spun. Sever ties? Was that even possible? They were adults, but legally, yes. She could file a declaration of disownment, not out of hatred, but necessity. And then it hit her. They'd already done it for her. Blocked, erased, rewritten history with a new mom. So why did it feel like she was the one being punished? She looked around the kitchen, the peeling linoleum, the fridge humming like it might give out any day, the photo on the wall of her holding newborn Tasha in a hospital gown 2 sizes too big. All those years, all that love, gone. But this letter, this was something else. Not salvation, not revenge. A choice. And for the first time in decades, it was entirely hers. She stood, walked to the drawer where she kept important papers, and pulled out a pen. Her hand didn't shake this time. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Life went on. But in that quiet kitchen, with the ghost of Mother's Day still clinging to the air, Lena Carter began to write her name. Not Elisa, a mother begging to be seen, but Elisa, a woman finally claiming her right to exist. And somewhere, far away, Karma leaned forward in its seat and smiled.
The affidavit sat on the kitchen table for 3 days. Lena didn't sign it. Not yet. Instead, she carried it with her like a secret, tucked inside her worn leather purse, folded beneath her Bible, even slipped between the pages of the nursing textbook she still kept on her nightstand, just in case. She'd read it every morning with her coffee, tracing the bold clause with her thumb. No financial or legal dependency on biological offspring. It wasn't just paperwork, it was a door, and once closed, there'd be no turning back. But what if they came back? That question haunted her as she walked to the bus stop on Tuesday morning, her nurse's scrubs crisp despite the fraying cuffs. She'd called in sick yesterday, first time in 17 years, but today, routine was armor. At St. Vincent's Hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. Her coworkers noticed the shadows under her eyes, but said nothing. They knew better. Lena Carter didn't share pain. She absorbed it, then handed out bandages to everyone else. During her lunch break, she sat alone in the break room, peeling the label off a soda can. That's when her phone, still silent since Mother's Day, lit up with a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Miss Carter?" a woman's voice asked, crisp and professional. "This is Marla Denton from Whitmore and Graves. We've been trying to reach you regarding the Wainwright estate." Lena's throat tightened. I got the letter." "Good. Because there's a complication." A pause. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. "The will includes a clause requiring you to appear in person at the probate hearing in Bozeman, Montana, next Friday. If you don't show, the estate reverts to a distant again. But more importantly," Marla lowered her voice, "your children have already filed a petition." Lena froze. "What?" "They claim you're mentally unfit to manage the inheritance due to emotional instability and long-term financial dependence. They're requesting conservatorship." The soda can crumbled and Lena's hissed. "They can't do that," she whispered. "They can try, especially if they argue you've been living in poverty while raising them, suggesting poor judgment. But here's the twist. If you've legally severed ties before the hearing, their claim vanishes."
"The court won't recognize them, alayhis salam, your next of kin." Lena stared out the window at the parking lot, where a young mother struggled to buckle a toddler into a car seat. The child wailed. The mother kissed her forehead and kept going, just like Lena used to. "So I have to choose," Lena said quietly. "Sign the affidavit or lose everything, including my dignity." "Or," Marla added gently, "you could let them win. Walk away. But ask yourself, after all you've given, do you really owe them your future too?" The line went quiet. When Lena returned to the floor, Nurse Ramirez took one look at her face and said, "Go home, Lena. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," Lena murmured. "My own." That night, she lit a single candle, the kind she used during blackouts, and laid the affidavit on the dining table. She filled a glass with water, placed her pen beside it, and sat in the dark for hours. Memories flickered like film reels. Marcus at 6, feverish, clinging to her neck, alayhis salam, she ran 10 blocks to the ER. Tasha at 14, sobbing because kids called her charity case for wearing thrift store jeans. Both of them at 22, hugging her at graduation, whispering, "We'll take care of you now, Mom." She'd believed them. Now, they wanted to lock her away so they could control her money. Money she never asked for, never expected. Outside, an owl hooted. The wind stirred the curtains. Lena picked up the pen. Her signature was steady, clear, final. Lenora Jean Carter. She sealed the envelope, addressed it to Whitmore and Grays, and placed it by the front door. Then she went to her closet and pulled out a suitcase, the same one she'd used when she left Marcus's father 30 years ago. She opened it, brushed dust from the lining,
and laid it on her bed. For the first time in her life, she wasn't packing for someone else. She was packing to disappear. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the ground shifting beneath the feet of those who thought they'd buried her kindness forever. Karma wasn't just listening anymore. It was packing its bags too.
The bus to Montana left at 5:17 a.m. Lena boarded with one suitcase, a thermos of black coffee, and the affidavit folded inside her bra, close to her heart, but hidden from view. She wore her only good coat, navy blue with frayed cuffs, and kept her eyes down. She took a window seat near the back. The driver barely glanced at her ticket before nodding her through. She didn't look back at the city skyline as the bus pulled away. For 2 days, she rode in silence, watching cornfields blur into prairie, then mountains rise like ancient sentinels. She ate crackers from a plastic bag, drank water from a gas station cup, and slept in fits, dreaming of Marcus's childhood laugh, Tasha's braids, the way their hands felt in hers when they were small. But waking always brought the same sharp truth. They didn't want her hands anymore. They wanted her name on a bank account. On the third morning, the bus groaned to a stop in Bozeman. Cold mountain air slapped her face as she stepped onto the platform. Snow dusted the rooftops, though it was late May. She hailed a cab with trembling fingers and gave the address, Gallatin County Courthouse. The probate hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. She arrived at 8:30. The courthouse was smaller than she expected. Brick and stone, ivy crawling up the columns, flags snapping in the wind. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and floor wax. A clerk directed her to room 214. She sat on a hard wooden bench in the hallway, clutching her purse like a shield. At 9:45, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. Lena recognized the car before she saw the faces. Marcus stepped out first, tailored suit, expensive haircut, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Tasha followed in designer boots and oversized sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. She held a leather portfolio stamped with her influencer brand logo, Tasha Lux, Curated Living. They didn't see her at first. Then Marcus turned and froze. "Mom?" His voice cracked, just slightly. Tasha whipped off her sunglasses. "Oh my God, you're here." Lena didn't move, didn't speak. Marcus approached cautiously, like she might vanish. "We didn't know you'd come. We tried calling." "You blocked me," Lena said quietly. A beat of silence. Tasha looked away, fiddling with her phone. "We unblocked you," Marcus said quickly. "Last night."
We were worried. Worried I'd get the money before you could take it? Lena's voice was calm, but it cut like glass. Marcus flinched. "That's not fair. We thought you might need help managing it. You've never handled that kind of sum." "I have handled rent when you had no shoes," Lena said. "I've handled hospital bills when you had pneumonia. I've handled your lies, your excuses, your silence. But I won't handle you treating me like a liability now that I finally have something of my own." Tasha stepped forward, eyes glistening. "Mom, please. We love you. This isn't about money. It's about protecting you." Lena looked at her daughter, the woman who'd called another woman Mom on social media, and felt something break inside, clean and final. "If you loved me," she said softly, "you wouldn't have needed a court to remind you I exist." Before they could respond, a bailiff opened the courtroom door. "Carter Estate, you're on." Lena stood. Marcus reached for her arm. "Wait, let us sit with you." She pulled away. "You don't get to sit with me anymore." Inside the courtroom, sunlight streamed through tall windows. A judge with silver hair and tired eyes nodded to Lena, took the stand. The attorney from Whitmore and Graves presented the signed affidavit. "Miss Carter," the judge asked, "do you understand that by severing legal ties with your biological children, you forfeit any right to claim them as dependents, heirs, or emergency contacts, now and forever?" "I do," Lena said. "And you do this of your own free will?" "Yes." Marcus stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I object. She's under emotional duress. She doesn't understand what she's signing." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Carter, you filed a petition for conservatorship based on alleged incapacity, yet your mother appears lucid, composed, and represented by counsel. Do you have medical evidence of impairment?" Marcus hesitated. "No, but..." "Then sit down." Tasha whispered something to him, tears streaming now. Lena didn't look at them. The judge reviewed the documents, then stamped the affidavit with a single, echoing thud. The severance is legally binding. The Wainwright estate is hereby released to Miss Lena Carter, free and clear. As Lena walked out of the courtroom, she didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply walked past her children without a word, her suitcase rolling softly behind her.
Outside, the Montana sun broke through the clouds, warm on her face. And for the first time in 30 years, Lena Carter walked alone. Not because she'd been abandoned, but because she'd finally chosen herself. Behind her, Marcus called out, "Mom, wait!" But she didn't turn. Because karma wasn't just watching anymore, it was walking beside her. The cab dropped her off at a small, cedar-sided inn on the edge of town, the Whispering Pines Lodge, the sign read, its letters faded by mountain wind. Lena paid the driver and crumpled bills from her purse, then stood on the porch for a long moment, suitcase in hand, listening to the silence. No sirens, no shouting neighbors, just the sigh of pine trees and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. She'd booked the room under her full name, Lenora Jean Carter. Not Mom, not Miss Carter from 42nd Street, just herself. Inside, the lobby smelled of wood smoke and lavender. The owner, a woman with silver braids and kind eyes, handed her a brass key. "Room 3, she said. "Quiet, faces east. You'll see the sunrise over the peaks." Lena nodded. "Thank you." Her room was simple. A wrought iron bed, a quilt stitched with wildflowers, a window that opened to a view of snow-dusted ridges. She set her suitcase down, ran her fingers over the smooth wood of the nightstand, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in years, there was no one waiting for her, no one needing her, no one judging her. She opened her suitcase, not to unpack, but to retrieve the only thing she brought that wasn't clothing or toiletries, a small cloth-bound photo album. She flipped it open. Page 1, her holding newborn Marcus in a hospital gown too big, her hair matted with sweat, eyes exhausted but shining. Page 2, Tasha's first birthday, cake smeared on her cheeks, Lena laughing as she tried to wipe it off. Page 5, both kids asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she'd sewn from old curtains. She traced their faces with her thumb. Then slowly she turned to the last page, a blank one. She pulled a pen from her pocket and wrote in careful script, "I loved you enough to let you go. Now I must love myself enough to stay gone." She closed the album, placed it back in the suitcase, and locked it. That evening she walked into town. The streets were quiet, lined with bookshops and cafes with chalkboard signs advertising huckleberry pie and locally roasted coffee. She stopped at a diner with red vinyl booths and ordered a slice of pie she didn't really want, just to feel normal, just to sit somewhere without being needed. As she ate, her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She almost ignored it, but something made her pull it out. It was a text from an unknown number. Unknown. "Miss Carter, this is Daniel Reyes. From Oakwood Lane. I hope you're okay. Your house has been empty for days. I left groceries on the porch. Please let me know you're safe." Lena stared at the message. Daniel, her neighbor, the quiet young man who shoveled her walk in winter, who fixed her leaky faucet last spring, who always waved when she came home from her shifts. He'd never asked for anything, never even mentioned her children. She typed back, hesitating over each word. "I'm safe. Thank you, Daniel. I won't be returning to Oakwood." A pause. Then, "I'm glad you're okay. If you ever need anything, even just someone to listen, I'm here. No expectations." Lena's throat tightened. She didn't reply, but she saved his number. Not a lifeline, just proof that not everyone in the world saw kindness as weakness. Back at the inn, she stood on the porch under a sky thick with stars. The air was so cool, a river of light she hadn't noticed since she was a girl. She thought of Marcus and Tasha, probably back in the city by now, scrambling to understand how they'd lost control of the narrative. They'd assumed she'd crumble, that she'd beg, that she'd sign anything just to hear them call her mom again. But they'd forgotten one thing. She wasn't broken, she was awake. And while they were busy calculating how much they'd lost, she was finally learning how much she'd gained. Peace, silence, choice.
The next morning, she called the bank Arthur Wainwright had named in his will. The manager confirmed the funds were available. She didn't ask for a debit card or a luxury car. She asked for one thing: a list of nonprofit organizations that support single mothers in crisis. Because if she couldn't save her own children from their own pride, maybe she could save someone else's. And as she wrote down names like Hope Haven and Second Chance Moms, she felt something stir inside her. Not grief, not anger, purpose. Far away, in a high-rise apartment, Marcus stared at his silent phone, wondering why his mother hadn't answered his 10th call. But Lena wasn't his mother anymore. Not in the way he wanted. She was becoming something else entirely. And Karma? Karma was already drafting the next chapter.
3 weeks passed. Lena didn't return to the city. She didn't check her old voicemail. She didn't scroll through Marcus's LinkedIn or Tasha's Instagram, though she knew without looking that their posts had grown quieter, more curated, less sure of themselves. Instead, she rented a small cottage on the edge of Bozeman, a 1-bedroom with a stone fireplace, a porch swing, and a view of the Gallatin River. She paid 6 months in advance, cash. The landlord, an elderly man named Ed, asked no questions. "You've got good eyes," he'd said, quiet but kind. "That's all I need to know." She spent her days walking the riverbank, reading library books about nonprofit law, and meeting with a local attorney who helped her draft the charter for what she now called Carter Haven, a shelter for single mothers fleeing abuse, poverty, or abandonment. She'd already wired $500,000 to secure the property, a shuttered bed and breakfast on 10 acres of land just outside town. The rest of the money would fund operations for 5 years. No board, no investors, just her vision, her rules, her silence. But even as she built something new, the past kept knocking. One rainy afternoon, a certified letter arrived. Not from a lawyer, from them. She recognized Tasha's handwriting on the envelope, looping, dramatic, the way she'd signed birthday cards as a teenager. Lena almost threw it in the fire, but curiosity, that old enemy, made her open it. Inside was a single sheet of cream paper. "Mom, we don't know where you are, but we hope this finds you. We're sorry. We were scared. Evelyn made us feel like we weren't enough unless we looked a certain way, lived a certain way, and we thought if we distanced ourselves from you, we'd finally belong. But we miss you. Not your money. You. Your laugh, your hands, the way you used to hum that old gospel song while cooking Sunday stew. Please come home. We'll make it right. Tasha and Marcus." Lena read it 3 times. Then she folded it slowly, walked to the wood stove, and held it over the flames until the edges curled black. She didn't burn it out of anger. She burned it because forgiveness wasn't a gift she could get yet, and false hope was a cruelty she refused to pass on. That night she dreamed of the old house on Oakwood Lane. In the dream, she stood in the kitchen, watching her younger self rock baby Marcus to sleep while Tasha drew pictures at the table. The air smelled of cinnamon and laundry soap. It was warm, safe. Then the walls began to dissolve, and behind them stood Evelyn Whitmore, smiling, holding a contract. Lena woke, gasping. She got up, made tea, and sat on the porch as dawn painted the mountains gold. Her phone buzzed. Not Daniel this time. A news alert. Rising Star attorney Marcus Carter placed on leave amid ethics probe. She clicked it open. The article detailed how Marcus had allegedly pressured a client, an elderly widow, into signing over her estate to a shell company linked to his firm. The whistleblower? A junior paralegal who'd found emails referencing the Carter Protocol, a strategy to reposition vulnerable assets under trusted management. Lena's stomach turned. Trusted management. Just like they'd tried to do to her. Before she could process it, another notification popped up, this one from Tasha's verified Instagram account. A video. Tasha sat in her luxury apartment, makeup smudged, eyes red. "I need to be honest," she whispered, voice trembling. "I built my brand on authenticity, but I haven't been authentic in years. I pretended my life was perfect. I pretended I had the perfect mom, when the truth is, I pushed away the only woman who ever truly loved me unconditionally." She paused, wiped her cheek. "My real mom,
Lena Carter, raised us alone, worked herself to the bone, and on Mother's Day, we blocked her. Because we were ashamed of where we came from, because we thought success meant erasing her. The video cut to a shaky clip of the old house on Oakwood Lane. She's gone now, and I don't know if she'll ever forgive us. But if you see this, Mom, I'm sorry. We were wrong. So wrong. The post ended with a single line. #RealMotherDay. Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in. This broke me. My mom worked 2 jobs too. Never thanked her enough. Where is Lena Carter? We need to find her. Lena closed the app. Her hands were steady. She wasn't angry, not even sad. Just tired. Tired of being the lesson in someone else's redemption arc. She walked inside, picked up the phone, and dialed Daniel. "Hey," she said when he answered.
Can you do me a favor? Anything. Find out everything you can about a woman named Evelyn Whitmore, and quietly check if there's any connection between her and that elderly widow in Marcus's case. A pause. You think she's behind it? I think, Lena said softly, some people don't just steal money. They steal souls, and then dress it up a la mentorship. She hung up, walked to the window, and watched a doe and her fawn step cautiously into the meadow behind her cottage. The world was burning their old life down. But here, in the quiet, something new was growing. And this time, Lena wouldn't let anyone, not her children, not Evelyn, not even Karma, decide when it was ready to bloom. The rain returned the night Daniel called back. Not the gentle Montana drizzle, but a hard, insistent downpour that drummed against the roof like a warning. Lena sat by the fireplace, a blanket over her knees, listening to his voice crackle through the phone line, tense, urgent. Lena, you were right. She didn't speak, just waited. There's a paper trail, Daniel said. Evelyn Whitmore's foundation made a donation to Marcus's firm 2 weeks before he took on the widow's case. And get this, the widow's estate, it's being transferred to a nonprofit called New Horizons Youth Initiative. Lena's fingers tightened around the blanket. That's Evelyn's pet project. Exactly. But here's the kicker. The widow's son, her only living relative, was denied access to her medical records. Marcus signed off on it, claiming she was incapacitated and vulnerable to familial exploitation. Lena closed her eyes. The words echoed like ghosts from her own nightmare. Emotionally unstable, long-term financial dependence. They hadn't just copied Evelyn's playbook. They'd rehearsed it on her first. I found something else, Daniel continued, lowering his voice. Evelyn hosted a private dinner 3 months ago. Guest list included Marcus, Tasha, and a judge from the probate court in Gallatin County. Lena went very still. So that's how they knew about the hearing. That's how they filed so fast. It wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. And she'd walked right into it. She thanked Daniel, hung up, and sat in the dark for a long time. The fire burned low. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the silhouette of the mountains like jagged teeth. Then she stood. She walked to her desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a manila folder labeled Carter Haven Legal. Inside were blueprints, permits, and a letter from the state approving her nonprofit status. But beneath them, something else. A small digital recorder. She'd bought it the day after the hearing, just in case. Now, she powered it on, inserted a fresh memory card, and dialed a number she'd memorized but never used. The call connected on the 3rd ring. Whitmore and Graves, how may I? Put me through to Evelyn Whitmore, Lena said, her voice calm, clear, steel wrapped in silk. A pause. May I ask who's calling? Tell her it's Lena Carter, the woman whose children she stole. Another silence, longer this time.
Then, click. A new voice. Smooth, controlled, familiar.
Lena, what a surprise.
You've been busy, Lena said, using my children, LAS Salam, pawns, teaching them to see love, LAS Salam, leverage. Evelyn laughed, a dry, polished sound. Oh, Lena, don't flatter yourself. They came to me, desperate to escape the shame of their upbringing. I simply showed them how to rise above it. And the widow? Was she shameful too? That's none of your concern. It is now. Evelyn's tone hardened. You think you've won? You're hiding in the woods with your little charity project? Meanwhile, Marcus and Tasha are crumbling, and when they do, they'll come crawling back. Not to you, but to me, because I'm the one who gives them what you never could. Power. Lena didn't flinch. Then let them come. But remember this, Evelyn. Power without conscience is just noise. And karma doesn't care how loud you are. It only cares how deep you cut. She ended the call. Then she pressed record, because she knew what came next. 2 days later, a black sedan rolled up the gravel drive to her cottage. Marcus stepped out alone, drenched, no umbrella, no suit, just a wrinkled shirt and hollow eyes. He stood at her door for 10 minutes before knocking. When she opened it, he fell to his knees. "Mom," he choked out, "they're going to disbar me. The Bar Association has evidence. Evelyn's cutting ties. She says I acted alone." Lena looked down at him, not with pity, not with rage, but with the quiet clarity of someone who'd already mourned him. "You did act alone," she said, "the moment you chose her over truth." "She promised us a future," he cried. We thought if we became what she wanted, we'd finally be enough." "You were always enough," Lena whispered. "You just forgot how to see it." He reached for her hand. "Please, help me fix this." She pulled away. "I can't fix what you broke, Marcus, but maybe you can." She handed him a flash drive. "What's this?" "No," Lena said. "I'm giving it to the widow's son, to the ethics board, to the press. But I'm letting you decide. Do you stand with her, or do you finally stand for something real?" He stared at the drive like it was a live wire. Behind him, thunder rolled. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Carter had to choose between the woman who taught him to climb and the mother who taught him to walk. Lena closed the door softly, not in anger, in hope. Because sometimes karma doesn't strike, it waits and watches and gives you one last chance to do the right thing. The flash drive disappeared into Marcus's coat pocket like a secret too heavy to hold in the open. He didn't thank her, didn't promise redemption, just stood there in the rain, shoulders hunched, if the weight of every lie he'd ever told had finally settled into his bones. Then he turned and walked back to the car without looking back. Lena watched from the window until the taillights vanished into the storm. She didn't know if he'd do the right thing, but for the first time, she realized she didn't need him to. That night, she dreamed of fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that purifies. In the dream, she stood in the courtyard of Carter Haven, watching women and children plant seeds in freshly turned earth. Their hands were dirty, their faces tired, but their eyes held something rare, hope unfiltered by shame. She woke before dawn, the scent of wet pine thick in the air. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A news alert. Breaking. Prominent attorney Marcus Carter submits evidence in ethics scandal. Names Evelyn Whitmore as mastermind. She clicked it open. The article detailed how Marcus had walked into the State Bar Association at 3 a.m., flash drive in hand, and confessed everything. He admitted to manipulating the widow's case under Evelyn's direction, revealed the probate court connection, and provided audio of Evelyn coaching him to isolate vulnerable assets from emotional claimants, a phrase that now echoed across headlines. By noon, Evelyn Whitmore had resigned from her firm. Her foundation was under federal investigation. And Tasha. She'd posted a raw, unfiltered video. No filters, no script. Just her, sitting on the floor of her empty apartment, surrounded by boxes. "I deleted my brand," she said, voice trembling but clear. "Tasha Lux was a lie. I built it on pretending I came from nothing, while erasing the woman who gave me everything. My mom didn't just raise us alone. She was our home, and I threw that away for likes." She looked directly into the camera, tears streaming. "If you're out there, Mom, I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm done lying, and I'm coming home, not to your house, but to myself, the person you tried to raise." The video ended with her holding up the silver locket Lena had given her on Mother's Day, still unopened. Lena touched her own chest, where her heart beat steady, quiet, no longer racing toward them.
She made tea, sat on the porch, watched the clouds break apart over the mountains. Then Daniel called. "They found something in Evelyn's files," he said. "A sealed envelope addressed to you, delivered to her office the day after Arthur Wainwright died." Lena went very still. "What's in it?" "We don't know, but the courier service confirmed it came from Montana, from him." Her breath caught. Arthur hadn't just left her money. He'd left her a message. 2 days later, a courier arrived at her cottage. Small box, no return label. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a letter and a key. The letter read, "Lena, if you're reading this, you've already chosen courage over comfort. Good. Now go further. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National in Bozeman. Inside is a deed to 200 acres bordering Gallatin National Forest. Build your haven there. Not an escape, a sanctuary. And one more thing. I knew about Evelyn. I watched her ruin families for sport. That's why I wrote the severance clause. Not to punish your children, but to protect you from her claws. You were never just a mother, Lena. You were always a refuge. Arthur." She drove to the bank that afternoon. The box contained the deed and a photograph. It showed a young Arthur standing woman who looked eerily like Lena. Same eyes, same proud set of the jaw. On the back, in faded ink, "My sister Eleanor, taken too soon. Her daughter would have been your age." Lena's hand shook. Arthur hadn't just been a distant cousin. He'd been family who never forgot her. She stood in the bank vault for a long time, the cold metal box open before her, sunlight slicing through the high windows. Outside, the world was unraveling, Evelyn's empire collapsing, her children stumbling through their reckoning. But here, in this quiet moment, Lena felt something bloom inside her. Not vengeance, not sorrow, but legacy. She walked out of the bank, the deed folded safely in her coat, and headed straight for the land office. Carter Haven wouldn't be a shelter. It would be a village, a place where mothers like her could heal, build, and belong, without ever having to beg for love. And as she signed the paperwork to begin construction, she finally understood. Karma hadn't spoken yet. It had simply handed her the pen. Ground broke on Carter Haven on the first day of autumn. Lena stood at the edge of the field, 200 acres of wild grass, aspen groves, and a clear creek winding through like a silver thread. Eliasam, the excavator's blade, bit into the earth. She wore work boots, jeans, and a flannel shirt Daniel had given her. No ceremony, no press, just her, 2 local contractors, and a vision drawn in pencil on yellow legal paper. But by noon, word had spread. A white pickup truck rolled down the dirt road, kicking up dust. Then another, and another. Women stepped out, some with toddlers on their hips, others with duffel bags slung over their shoulders, eyes wary but hopeful. They'd seen the flyers pinned to laundromats and bus stops. Carter Haven, a place to breathe. No questions, no judgment. Lena walked toward them, not Eliasam a savior, but Eliasam someone who knew the weight they carried. One woman, barely 20, whispered, "Is it really free?" "For as long as you need," Lena said. Another, older, with tired eyes and a faded bruise on her wrist, asked, "Do you turn anyone away?" "Only those who hurt the ones who come here looking for peace," Lena replied. They nodded, stayed. By sunset, 7 families had claimed spots in the temporary cabins Lena had already built, simple, sturdy, with wood stoves and wide windows that faced the sunrise. That night, as she sat by a campfire with the women sharing stories under a sky thick with stars, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost didn't answer, but the number was familiar.
It was the hospital back in the city, her old unit. "Lena," a voice said, Nurse Ramirez, "I know you're gone, but there's a patient, single mom, postpartum complications, no family. She keeps asking if you're still working, says you held her hand through chemo 2 years ago." Lena closed her eyes. "I'm not there anymore, Rosa. I know, but she has nowhere to go when she's discharged. Social services says she'll lose the baby if she can't prove stable housing." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the soft murmur of women laughing nearby. Then Lena said, "Send her here." "To Montana?" "Yes. Tell her Carter Hazen has room." Rosa exhaled sharply. "You're really doing it. You're building what we always talked about." "We talked about it," Lena said softly.
"Now I'm living it." She hung up, looked around at the faces glowing in the firelight, women who'd been told they were too broken, too poor, too much, and felt something settle deep in her chest. This wasn't just shelter. It was resurrection. The next morning, a delivery van arrived with supplies Lena hadn't ordered: diapers, formula, prenatal vitamins, baby blankets. Attached was a note: "From nurses who never forgot you. St. Vincent's night shift." She cried then, not from sadness, but from the quiet shock of being remembered for who she truly was, not for what she could give. Later that week, a letter came from Tasha. Not an email, not a post. A real letter, handwritten on plain paper. "Mom, I sold my apartment, deleted all my socials. I'm volunteering at a women's shelter downtown. It's hard. I don't know how you did it for so long without applause. I'm not asking for anything. Just, I wanted you to know I'm trying to be the daughter you raised, not the woman I pretended to be. Tasha." Lena folded the letter and tucked it into the photo album, the one with the blank last page. She didn't write back, but she left the door unlocked that night, just in case. Meanwhile, Marcus had vanished from the headlines. Rumors said he'd enrolled in a restorative justice program, working pro bono for victims of elder financial abuse. He hadn't reached out, and Lena didn't expect him to. Some reckonings are meant to be walked alone. As the weeks passed, Carter Haven grew. A greenhouse went up, a community kitchen, a small schoolroom for the children. Local farmers donated produce. A retired teacher offered lessons. And in that moment, she knew karma hadn't punished her children. It had freed her. And freedom, she realized, was the most powerful inheritance of all. Winter came early to the Gallatin Valley. By November, snow blanketed the fields of Carter Haven, muffling the world in white silence. The cabins glowed with amber light, smoke curling from chimneys into a sky so clear it felt like glass. Inside, the community thrived. Women cooked together, children built snow forts, and every Sunday they gathered in the main hall for what they called Truth Circle. No masks, no performances, just voices rising like steam from honest hearts. Lena rarely spoke in those circles. She listened, watched, held space. But one evening, Elias wind howled through the pines. A knock came at her cottage door. Not the soft tap of a neighbor, but 3 sharp raps, urgent and out of rhythm with the storm. She opened it. Tasha stood on the porch, drenched in snow. No coat, just a thin sweater and jeans. Her hair was wet, her lips blue, her hands empty. No designer bag, no phone, no armor. "Mom," she whispered, voice raw from cold or crying. Lena couldn't tell. Lena didn't move, didn't step aside, just looked at the daughter who'd once called another woman mom on a screen seen by millions. "I walked from the bus station," Tasha said. 10 miles. I didn't know if you'd let me come." "Why now?" Lena asked. "Because I have nothing left to hide behind." Inside, Tasha sat by the fire, wrapped in a quilt Lena handed her without a word. Steam rose from her skin as she thought. She didn't apologize again, didn't beg,
just stared into the flames like they held answers. Then she reached into her pocket and placed something on the coffee table. The silver locket, still unopened. "I never looked inside," she said. "I was too ashamed. I thought if I opened it, I'd see the truth, and I wasn't ready to face it." Lena picked up the locket. It was cold. She clicked it open. Inside, on one side, a tiny photo of baby Tasha, grinning with missing teeth. On the other, a slip of paper with Lena's handwriting. "To my Starlight, you are enough exactly as you are. Mom." Tasha burst into tears. Not performative, not for an audience. Just grief, pure and unfiltered, for all the years she'd chosen image on love. "I threw away your words," she sobbed. Lena sat beside her. Not close, but near enough. "You didn't throw them away," she said softly.
"You just forgot how to hear them." They sat in silence, alayhi salam. The fire crackled. Outside, snow fell heavier. Then Tasha said, "Can I stay? Not in your house, just here, at Carter Haven. I'll work, clean, cook, whatever you need." Lena studied her, the dark circles under her eyes, the calluses on her hands from scrubbing floors at the shelter downtown, the absence of filters in her gaze. "This isn't a second chance for you to earn me back," Lena said. "It's a place to find yourself, if that's what you want." Tasha nodded. "It is." The next morning, Lena introduced her to the community. Not alayhi salam, her daughter, but alayhi salam, Tasha, a new sister. No fanfare, no special treatment. She was given a cabin on the far edge, assigned kitchen duty, and told the rules. Respect the circle, protect the peace, speak your truth. Some women eyed her warily. They'd seen her viral videos, knew her past. But Tasha didn't flinch. She scrubbed pots until her hands cracked. She rocked babies to sleep when their mothers were overwhelmed. She sat in Truth Circle and said simply, "I used to sell lies about being perfect. Now I'm learning how to be real." And slowly they believed her. One night, alayhi salam, Lena walked the path between cabins. She saw Tasha sitting alone on a bench, staring at the stars. She joined her. "Do you think Marcus will come?" Tasha asked quietly. Lena sighed. "He has to want to heal more than he wants to hide." Tasha nodded. "I hope he does." They sat in silence, two women bound by blood but rebuilding on something deeper. Choice. Far away, in a small apartment above a laundromat, Marcus stared at a letter he'd written and rewritten 10 times. It sat on his desk, unsent. "Mom, I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I'm trying to become someone who wouldn't break it again." He hadn't mailed it, but he'd started showing up at elder care centers, listening to stories no one else wanted to hear. And though he didn't know it yet, his path was leading him north. Back to the woman who'd taught him that true strength isn't in winning, but in returning. That night, alayhi salam, snow continued to fall over Carter Haven. Lena stood on her porch and watched Tasha help a young mother carry firewood. There was no grand reunion, no tearful forgiveness, just presence. And in the quiet, karma didn't speak in thunder or headlines. It spoke in small acts, hands reaching, hearts opening, wounds slowly turning into wisdom. And for the first time in her life, Lena let herself believe. Maybe love doesn't always have to hurt to be real.
Spring arrived not with a fanfare, but with a whisper. Meltwater dripping from the eaves, crocuses pushing through thawing soil, and the first robin singing at dawn. Carter Haven hummed with new life, children's laughter echoing across the meadow, gardens being tilled, and the scent of fresh bread drifting from the communal kitchen. Tasha had been there 3 months. She no longer flinched when someone mentioned her past.
She'd cut her hair short, traded designer labels for flannel and boots, and started teaching literacy classes in the schoolroom. The women called her Tash now, not Tasha Lux, not Carter's daughter, just Tash. A person, not a persona. Lena watched her from a distance, careful not to smother, not to expect. Healing wasn't linear. Some nights Tasha still cried in her cabin, but she never asked to leave. Then, on a Tuesday morning thick with mist, a battered sedan pulled up the long drive. It wasn't Marcus. It was Evelyn Whitmore. She stepped out slowly, leaning on a cane, her once impeccable suit wrinkled, her silver hair pulled back in a plain bun. No entourage, no lawyer, just a woman who looked 10 years older than the last time Lena saw her photo in the news. Lena stood on the porch, arms crossed, heart steady. Evelyn approached, stopping 10 feet away. "I didn't come to apologize," she said, voice raspy but clear. "I came to ask why." "Why what?" Lena replied. "Why you didn't destroy me completely. You had the evidence, the recordings, the connections. You could have leaked everything to the press, ruined me forever." Lena studied her, the pride still flickering in her eyes, but dimmed like a candle running low. "I didn't want to become you," Lena said simply. "Power isn't about breaking people, it's about giving them room to rebuild." Evelyn's jaw tightened. For a moment, Lena thought she'd turn and leave. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folder. "My foundation's assets are being liquidated," she said. "The court ordered restitution to the victims, including the widow. But there's one thing they can't seize." She held out the folder. "The land deed to the Whitmore Retreat Center in Aspen. It's yours. Consider it seed capital." Lena didn't take it. "Why?" "Because I watched you build something real while I built a house of mirrors," Evelyn said, her voice cracking.
And for the first time, I see the difference. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the wind in the aspens. Then Lena stepped forward and took the folder. Not Elisa's a gift, but Elisa's a reckoning. "You'll stay for lunch," she said. Not a question, a statement. Evelyn blinked. "What?" "You'll eat with us, sit in the circle, hear their stories. Not Elisa's Evelyn Whitmore CEO, just a woman who made choices and now has to live with them." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. At noon, she sat at the long table in the main hall, surrounded by women who'd lost everything to men, systems, or their own shame. Tasha served her soup without a word. Evelyn ate slowly, eyes downcast. When Truth Circle began, no one spoke to her, but no one shunned her either. And when an elderly woman named Raylene shared how she'd been swindled out of her home by a charity advisor, Evelyn didn't look away. She listened. That evening, as she prepared to leave, Evelyn turned to Lena at the gate. "Will you ever forgive me?" Lena met her gaze. "Forgiveness isn't mine to give or withhold. It's yours to earn, with your actions, not your words." Evelyn nodded, got into her car, and drove away. But 2 weeks later, a truck arrived with building supplies, lumber, insulation, solar panels. Attached was a note, "For the new wing, EW." No signature, no fanfare, just quiet repair. Meanwhile, far to the south, Marcus stood outside a courthouse in downtown Chicago, watching a frail old woman hug her son, the one who'd been denied access for months. The case was closed. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. A reporter approached him. "Mr. Carter, any comment on your mother's work in Montana?" Marcus looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting in gold and violet. "She taught me that legacy isn't what you leave behind," he said softly. "It's what you help others build while you're still here." He didn't say her name, but everyone knew. Back at Carter Haven, Lena stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, the deed to the Aspen land in her hand. She wouldn't use it for luxury. She'd turn it into a second sanctuary, this one for mothers recovering from trauma, with therapy cabins and art studios, in silence as deep as snow. Tasha joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. Thinking about saying yes to Evelyn's offer? Lena smiled faintly.
"I'm thinking about making it better than she ever imagined." Below them, children ran through the field, chasing fireflies that hadn't even appeared yet, but would soon. And in that moment, Lena understood. Karma wasn't punishment. It was invitation. An invitation to rise, not above others, but beyond the pain.
and she was finally ready to accept.
The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under Lena's door in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single card, embossed with gold lettering. You are cordially invited to the annual Humanitarian Leadership Gala, hosted by the National Coalition for Family Equity, New York City, June 15th. At the bottom, handwritten in familiar script, "They want to honor you. Don't make me beg. Tasha." Lena stared at it for a long time. New York, cameras, speeches, the very world she'd fled, the world that rewarded performance over truth. She almost threw it in the fire. But that night, she walked the perimeter of Carter Haven. She passed the greenhouse where Tasha was teaching a group of girls how to press wildflowers into journals. One of them, a shy 12-year-old named Maya, looked up and said, "Miss Tosh, do you think someone like me could ever be on a stage?" Tasha knelt beside her. "Only if you speak your truth, not what they want to hear." Lena stopped in the shadows, listening, and she realized this wasn't about her comfort anymore. It was about showing every girl like Maya and every mother like the ones here that you could walk away from shame and still be seen. She booked a one-way ticket. 2 weeks later, she stood in a borrowed black dress in the green room of the Grand Ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. Her hands were steady, but her heart pounded like it hadn't since the day she signed the affidavit. Tasha found her there, radiant in a deep emerald gown, no makeup beyond lip balm, her hair pulled back simply. "You came," she whispered, eyes glistening. "I came for them," Lena said, nodding toward the ballroom doors, where murmurs of the crowd drifted through. "They're calling you next." On stage, the spotlight was blinding. Lena blinked, gripping the podium, the sea of faces indistinct but expectant. Cameras flashed. Someone whispered, "That's her, the woman who walked away from her own children's betrayal and built a sanctuary instead." She took a breath and spoke, not as a victim, not as a saint, but as a witness. "I didn't raise my children alone because I wanted to be a hero," she began, voice clear and low. "I did it because there was no one else. And when they turned their backs on me, I didn't build Carter Haven to punish them. I built it because I finally understood. Love isn't measured in gratitude.
It's measured in what you leave behind for those who still need it." She paused. The room was silent. Too many mothers are told they're not enough because they're poor, because they're tired, because they don't fit the picture-perfect story. But real strength isn't in never falling. It's in rising and holding out your hand to the next woman climbing out of the dark. Then, without warning, she looked directly into the front row. Marcus sat there, clean-shaven, wearing a simple suit, no tie. He hadn't RSVP'd. No one knew he was coming. Their eyes met. He didn't smile, didn't cry, just nodded, once, like a man finally seeing his mother not a symbol, but as a person. Lena turned back to the crowd. "My children made choices. I made mine. And tonight, I choose to stand not for myself, but for every mother who's been erased, ignored, or used. You are seen, you are worthy, and your love, however it's returned, is never wasted." The applause started slowly, then swelled into a roar. But Lena didn't wait for it to peak. She stepped down, walked past the champagne flutes and flashing cameras, and headed straight for the service elevator. Tasha followed, catching up in the hallway. "You left your award on the podium," she said, breathless. "It's not mine," Lena replied. "It belongs to every woman at Carter Haven." Outside, the city pulsed with noise and light. But Lena hailed a cab and gave an address uptown. Not a hotel, not a studio, but a small community center in Harlem. "What are we doing here?" Tasha asked as they stepped inside. Lena smiled faintly. "Meeting the team who'll help us open Carter Haven East." Because the gala wasn't the destination, it was the doorway. And as she shook hands with local organizers, mothers, activists, survivors, she felt it again.
That quiet hum of purpose, deeper than fame, stronger than forgiveness. Later, as they walked back to their hotel through the warm June night, Marcus appeared on the sidewalk ahead. He didn't approach, just stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting. Lena stopped. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quietly. "Just, can I walk with you for a while?" She looked at him, the boy who once clung to her neck in fever, the man who tried to control her future, the stranger who was slowly becoming something new. "Yes," she said.
And so they walked, 3 of them, side by side, but not yet whole, through the streets of a city that had once demanded they hide their truth. Above them, stars blinked through the haze of city lights. And Karma, silent and patient, watched them take their first steps, not back to the past, but forward, together, into something they would have to build with their own hands. The summer heat clung to New York like a second skin. They walked, Lena, Tasha, and Marcus, down quiet side streets where the roar of traffic softened into something almost like breath. No one spoke at first. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said in years. Marcus kept his hands in his pockets, eyes on the pavement. "I visited the widow last week," he finally said. "Her name is Margaret. She's 92. She asked about you." Lena didn't look at him. "What did you tell her?" "That you're building places where women like her won't be preyed on again." He paused. She said, "Tell her thank you, and tell her I hope she finds peace." Lena nodded. Peace wasn't a place. It was a practice, and she was learning it, day by day. They stopped at a small park, just a bench beneath a sycamore tree, its leaves rustling in the humid air. Lena sat. After a moment, so did they. Tasha culled a folded paper from her bag. "I've been working on this," she said, handing it to Lena. It was a proposal. Carter Haven East, a blueprint for urban sanctuary. Detailed floor plans, partnership outlines with local shelters, trauma-informed care protocols, even a budget funded by grants and private donors, including a surprising line item, initial seed grant, anonymous, former industry executive. Lena looked up. "Evelyn?" Tasha nodded. "She's funding the first year. No strings. Just quiet repair." Marcus cleared his throat. "I've been consulting with legal aid groups. We can structure it so no one, not even family, can override a resident's autonomy. Not like what happened to you." Lena studied them, their faces open, their postures unguarded. Not performing, not pleading, just offering. "You don't have to do this to earn me back," she said softly. "We know," Marcus replied. "We're doing it because we finally understand what you were trying to teach us all along. Love isn't a transaction. It's a responsibility." A breeze stirred the leaves. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. Lena reached into her own bag and pulled out 2 envelopes, one for each of them. Inside were keys, not to her cottage, not to a bank vault, but to offices at Carter Haven East. "Your names are on the charter," she said. "Not as my children, as co-founders, if you want it." Tasha's eyes filled. Marcus exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years.
But before they could speak, Lena's phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Lena, emergency. A wildfire spreading near Bozeman. Evacuation order issued for the valley. Carter Haven's in the zone." Her blood turned to ice. She stood abruptly. "I have to go." Marcus was already pulling out his phone. "I'll charter a flight. Now." Tasha grabbed her hand. "We're coming with you." Lena hesitated. "You don't have to." "Yes, we do," Tasha said firmly. "They're our family, too." 3 hours later, they landed in Montana. Smoke darkened the western sky. Carter Haven was already evacuated, the women and children safely relocated to a church in town, but the main hall, the greenhouse, the cabins, all stood vulnerable, surrounded by dry grass and wind-whipped pines. Lena ran toward the property, heart hammering. But as she crested the hill, she stopped. Dozens of people were there. Neighbors, volunteers, even Ed the landlord, forming a human chain, passing buckets of water, clearing brush, wrapping the buildings in fire-resistant tarps. And at the center of it all, directing efforts with calm urgency, was Daniel. He saw her and jogged over. "We got your message. Everyone's safe. And we're not losing this place."
Behind her, Marcus and Tasha stepped forward without hesitation. Marcus grabbed a shovel, Tasha joined the bucket line. Lena stood for a moment, watching them, her children, strangers no longer, working alongside the very community they'd once abandoned her for. Then she rolled up her sleeves and joined the line. For 2 days they fought the fire together, hauling water, dousing embers, sleeping in shifts under a sky choked with ash. On the third morning, the wind shifted. The fire crews gained control. Carter Haven stood, scorched at the edges, yes, but standing. That night, exhausted and soot-streaked, they gathered around a campfire on the ridge. No speeches, no grand declarations, just shared silence, warm stew, and the sound of the creek still running clear below. Marcus handed Lena a cup of tea. "I never knew what home really was," he said quietly, "until I saw you build one for people who had none." Tasha leaned her head on Lena's shoulder, tentatively, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. Lena didn't pull away.
She wrapped an arm around her daughter, and for the first time in years, let herself rest in the weight of someone else's trust. Above them, the smoke cleared just enough to reveal a single star. And Karma, watching from the quiet dark, finally closed its ledger. Not with punishment, but with presence. Because sometimes the greatest justice isn't in the fall, but in the return.
The morning after the fire, mist rose from the creek like breath returning to the land. Carter Haven stood, bruised but unbroken, its windows intact, its roof whole, the garden scorched at the edges but still rooted in earth. Lena walked the perimeter alone, boots crunching on ash-dusted grass. In her hand, she held a letter delivered by courier at dawn, thick paper, official seal. It was from the probate court. Not about her, about Evelyn Whitmore. She'd passed quietly in her sleep 3 nights prior. Heart failure, the note said. No family, no public memorial. But in her will, she'd left one final instruction. All remaining personal assets, including the Aspen property, liquid investments, and intellectual rights to my published works, shall be transferred irrevocably to the Carter Haven Foundation, under the sole governance of Lena Carter. Use it well. Lena folded the letter slowly. No apology, no plea, just trust. And in that moment, she understood. Evelyn hadn't just given money. She'd given back the future she'd tried to steal. Back at the main hall, breakfast was underway. Oatmeal, fresh bread, laughter rising with the steam. Tasha stirred a pot of stew for lunch. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, helping Maya with her math homework. Lena watched them, their ease, their quiet presence, and felt something shift inside her. Not like a crack, but like a door swinging open after years of rust. She walked to the old oak at the center of the meadow, the one they'd all started calling the witness tree, and pulled 2 envelopes from her coat. She called them over. Marcus and Tasha came, wiping hands on aprons, wary but willing. "These aren't apologies," Lena said, handing them each an envelope. "They're invitations." Inside were legal documents, not adoption papers, not inheritance claims, but restoration affidavits. Formal, voluntary reinstatement of parental recognition, drafted by Lena's attorney, requiring nothing from them but honesty. "If you sign," she said, "it doesn't erase what happened. It just says you choose to walk forward with me. Not Elias the children I lost, but Elias the people you're becoming." Tasha read hers twice, tears falling on the page. Marcus traced the embossed seal with his thumb, jaw tight. "You don't have to decide now.
Take your time." But Tasha picked up the pen from the picnic table and signed right there, her handwriting bold and sure. Marcus hesitated longer. Then he looked up, eyes glistening. "Does this mean I get to call you Mom again?" Lena met his gaze. "Only if you mean it." He signed. No fanfare, no cameras, just ink on paper and a silence thick with second chances. That afternoon, Alayhi Salam volunteers began replanting the garden. A car rolled up the drive. Unmarked, plain. A man in a dark suit stepped out, holding a sealed envelope. "For Miss Carter," he said, "from the office of the governor." Inside was a proclamation. In recognition of extraordinary humanitarian service, unwavering resilience, and the creation of a national model for maternal sanctuary, the state of Montana hereby designates June 10th Alayhi Salam Carter Haven Day, a day to honor mothers who build hope from heartbreak. Lena didn't post it online, didn't frame it. She simply read it aloud at dinner that night. The women cheered. Maya clapped so hard she dropped her spoon. Later, Alayhi Salam stars pricked the sky. Lena sat on the porch with Daniel.
You know, he said softly, you could have walked away from all of it. From them, from this place. You had the money, the freedom. I did, she said, but freedom isn't running away. It's choosing what's worth staying for. He smiled. They're lucky to have you. No, she said, looking toward the cabins where soft light glowed in every window. I'm lucky to have them. Inside one of those cabins, Tasha tucked Maya into bed, humming the old gospel song Lena used to sing, off-key, tender, full of grace. And in another, Marcus wrote a letter, not to a judge, not to a client, but to Margaret, the widow, telling her the sanctuary was real, and it was growing. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and new soil. And Karma, having spoken long enough through silence, finally whispered, "This is how healing begins, not with grand gestures, but with small, stubborn acts of return. Not with erasing the past, but with planting something beautiful in its ashes."
5 years later, the aspens at Carter Haven stood taller, their leaves shimmering gold in the late September sun. The land had healed, more than healed. It had flourished. New cabins dotted the meadow, connected by winding paths lined with lavender and sage. A solar-powered community center buzzed with activity. Children painting murals, mothers learning carpentry, elders sharing stories in rocking chairs on wide porches. Powder Haven East had opened in Harlem 2 years prior, and now a third site was breaking ground in New Orleans. Lena stood on the porch of her original cottage, now preserved as a quiet space for reflection, watching the annual harvest gathering unfold below. Tables groaned under pies, roasted vegetables, and jars of wildflower honey. Laughter rose like song. She was older now, her hair more silver than black, her hands mapped with lines from work and weather, but her eye, still sharp, still kind, held a peace that hadn't been earned easily, but kept fiercely. Tasha approached, holding a toddler on her hip, the daughter she'd adopted from a young mother who'd found refuge here. "Maya's leading the storytelling circle," she said, smiling. "She's doing the part about the fire." Lena chuckled. "Does she still say I fought it with a frying pan?" Now it's a magic shield forged in maternal fury. Marcus appeared beside them, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting his forearms. He'd traded courtrooms for kitchens, running Carter Haven's culinary training program, a path to dignity for women rebuilding after addiction or abuse. "You're missing your own tribute," he said gently. Today wasn't just harvest. It was the 5th anniversary of Carter Haven Day, and this year they were unveiling something new. They walked together down the hill, not as mother and children, but as co-stewards, bound not by blood alone, but by choice, repair, and daily acts of courage. At the center of the meadow, beneath the witness tree, now strung with lanterns and wind chimes, a small crowd had gathered. Daniel stood at the front, holding a velvet cloth over a stone plaque. When Lena reached him, he stepped aside without a word. She pulled the cloth away. Carved into granite were these words: "This sanctuary was born from betrayal, watered by tears, and built by hands that refused to stop loving. Here, no mother walks alone." Below, etched smaller, "In memory of all who gave everything and were told it wasn't enough." A hush fell over the crowd. Then, one by one, women stepped forward, placing wildflowers, handwritten notes, even baby shoes at the base of the stone. Later, as dusk painted the sky in violet and rose, Lena sat alone on the ridge where she'd once watched her world burn. Now, she watched it glow. Footsteps crunched behind her. Tasha and Marcus sat on either side, not speaking, just being. After a long silence, Marcus said, "I dreamt of you last night. You were young again, standing in that old kitchen on Oakwood Lane. You turned and said, 'It's going to be okay.'" Lena smiled faintly. "Was I right?" Tasha leaned her head on Lena's shoulder. "You always were." Below, candles flickered to life across the meadow, hundreds of them, held by women who'd once believed they were unworthy of light.
And in that moment, Lena knew. Karma hadn't punished her children. It had given them a mirror. And in its reflection, they'd finally seen her, not as a symbol of their shame, but as the quiet force who loved them enough to let them fall, and loved the world enough to rise anyway. She took their hands, one scarred from cooking fires, the other calloused from digging gardens, and squeezed gently. No grand speeches, no viral moments, just 3 souls sitting in the quiet after the storm, finally home. Far below, a child laughed. A guitar began to play. Someone started singing an old gospel tune, off-key, tender, full of grace. And as the first stars blinked awake above the mountains, Lena Carter closed her eyes and let herself rest.